A new lens with a new name, some legacy brands with new names, a real nice advancement in drones for you guys, and there are some constant lights that can handle a lot of weather that also strobe. Let's get into it. What's going on, everyone? Seth Miranda here. This is Adorama Rewind, and there's a lot of stuff you guys need to know about, some big changes happening, and one of them starting off with Olympus. OM System. Yep, that's the new name for Olympus, and they just put out their first new lens with that brand on it. Let's take a look. It is the 20mm f1.4, and this is basically like having a 40mm because micro four thirds size sensors are half the size of full frame sensors, so it's kind of like that. Now, if you notice, it says OM System right here in the lower left around that lens. So this is for Olympus cameras. It's basically as if Olympus would have put this out. You know this is from Olympus R&D over the last year or two. It's just putting on that OM System, which we knew was coming, the rebrand. Well, it's here. So you were looking at a really well-made lens with some really nice weather sealing IPX1. They're saying it has high-speed precision autofocus, and it's made for high-res resolve on those sensors for some better resolution sensors. This is interesting that they put out a new lens, great, but the real interesting part is Olympus's name is fading away on the actual gear itself. I mean, even here in the schematics, they're making sure that you see the OM System right here on the top right. The lens itself, nothing different, right? This is what you expect from that Zuiko line and Olympus itself. But just so you know, we heard about Olympus kind of exiting the market, but they actually just sold it to another company. And they did say they were going to continue making stuff. They have been putting out things, and now the Olympus name is no longer on it. It's OM System. So if you are an Olympus shooter, let me know down below what you think about that. Do you even care what name is on there as long as it's the same thing? I know that there's been a lot of like, oh no, it's all over for them, but clearly they're sticking to their promise of still putting out equipment that they've had in development. So how many years that development's going on, I don't know. Will it continue? They're saying it will. So, you know, all hopes for all you Olympus fans out there, but now are you OM System fans? All right, another new product coming out with another new legacy brand rename is actually Lastolite. So you guys have seen me use Lastolite modifiers and things like that on speed lights and reflectors and all sorts of stuff forever. In demos, I've talked about them, I've shown them nonstop. They're always in my bag in some way or another. Well, Lastolite is no more. We're going just by Manfrotto. In fact, Lastolite has always been underneath the Manfrotto brand name. I think their Instagram is even Lastolite by Manfrotto forever. Well, now it's just Manfrotto. So if you're looking for any Lastolite products and you're having trouble finding them, it's under the Manfrotto name now. So the big deal though is they put out a new version of their Halo Compact Reflector. So this is actually the Lastolite version of it. This is a 32-inch reflector that would normally be like a disc you twist up and have like this floppy thing hanging around that you can't jam in a bag or hang off your bag. This changed everything for me. I never wonder, should I take my reflector? I really don't have enough space for it, or do I even want to deal with it, or do I have it on me? I always have one of these in my bag because it's just so easy to fit in my kit. Well, now they put out a bigger version of this. This is 32 inches. Now you're getting a 38-inch disc that allows you to do either a two-stop diffuser or a reflector skin. Now, you've seen me use this forever. I mean, this has probably been in every video in the last couple of years me and Fernando shoot. You can check it out in the Fuji 50mm f1 video. You see me popping open the frame right here, slapping on the skin, and I've got a reflector. This is actually the deflector skin where it's actually bands of silver on a diffuser. So it can be a diffuser, a two-stop diffuser on one side and a reflector on the other, or even the white diffuser is solid enough to reflect somewhat if you need a white bounce on the fly. I love this thing and I use it all the time. It gives me a lot of options to do things in the field without taking a lot of space in my bag up. Huge, huge, huge. You even see me use it in other videos like this Profoto A10 video where I use it as the diffuser, and you can see that I'm just using an arm to hold it out on the stand and an arm with the speed light, and I can actually zoom the speed light to use part of it or the whole diffuser. It lets me have a lot of control over what type of light I get out of it, how much spill I get, even though it's not an enclosed light modifier. It's kind of like having a shoot-through umbrella or a very spilly Octabank, if you want to call it that. But it is really cool that you can pack down basically a speed light and this, and you're pretty much good to go with. It's amazing what we can carry carry in our backpacks nowadays, and the level of production we can put out there with just what we can fit on our backs. It's amazing, and I think this absolutely adds to it. So instead of just the 32-inch, you now have a 38-inch if you want to cover more surface area. Maybe you're shooting groups, maybe you just always want it. Or one thing that's really nice is if you want to put it behind someone and get like a white background, you now have just that much more surface area. More options are always good for us, but the big thing I want you to take away from is if you are looking for anything Lastolite, make sure you're looking for it as Manfrotto now, okay? That's the big deal. So we got Olympus going to OM System, and we got Lastolite going to Manfrotto. All right, let's talk about drones. The DJI Mavic 3 just got put out there, and whoa, did they change a bunch of stuff. This is pretty cool. Usually when we hear about new drones, they're like, oh, it's got a little bit of this, an extra mode on that, but this is an actual pretty big advancement. The DJI Mavic 3 is featuring 2 cameras. Yeah, so you have a 4/3 sensor on a Hasselblad camera that is wide angle, so you have 24mm, and then you also have a second camera that's kind of like their telephoto, where they're giving you, let me see if I can find it, they're giving you 162mm as a zoom, 28 times hybrid zoom they're calling it. So that's a pretty crazy thing. You got 2 cameras on it, 2 field of views, and you can just get up in the air and get a lot out of one flight. You have 5.1K video recording, you have 4K 120 and Apple ProRes 422 HQ 10-bit. Awesome. Now, the thing I find to be the like legit headline of the feature list, aside from the 2 cameras, is the flight time being 46 minutes and the video transmission range being over 9 miles. Whoa, yeah, so 15-kilometer transmission range and 46 minutes of flight time. That means you can get this idea of, I only have 20 minutes to fly this thing, or I only have 1 battery, or we went from having batteries that were like 10, 15 minutes to now 46-minute flight times. You can now get the shot you're looking for. You can now get extra shots you may not have gotten before. Sorry if you guys are hearing the train, Brooklyn. But this is huge. I mean, 46 minutes of flight time is enormous. It's like an eternity when it comes to drones. Forever, we were just talking about shorter battery times and just getting the shot we need that had the most impact. But now, maybe you'll find those extra shots. Now, maybe you'll fly it longer. Now, maybe you'll reach those places you couldn't get to, or be able to carry less batteries with you. I mean, it just having the ability to use your equipment for longer, I mean, the benefits go on forever, right? So that's pretty awesome. Let me know down below if you are a DJI Mavic owner, if this is a huge thing to you. Let me know if you're thinking about upgrading to it. I think it's a huge push. The 2 cameras, the flight time, and the transmission, it's all around just a great advancement and progression in the series of the DJI Mavic. All right, let's talk about something a little techie, a little whoa, and this might get a little out of hand with my explanation, but I think it's something you guys should know about. We've seen some systems like this before exist, but I think Light in Motion has done something a little bit more elevated with it. So just full disclaimer, I haven't gotten my hands on these. We should be getting our hands on them soon, but I have talked to a lot of people who have been using them, so that's where my insights are coming from mainly. Let's talk about the Light in Motion new StellaPro Reflex and StellaPro Reflex S. These are what they're calling hybrid lights. So these are high output LEDs that can be on battery or ran out of a wall. These are also tough lights like a lot of the other StellaPros. These are IP65, which means that they can get wet, not submerged, but they can handle the elements out there. The power source is from what they showed me was a 100-watt USB power brick. So you are running it through USB. There's no like actual AC input or DC input. It's a USB power source, just so you know that. There is a battery in the handle, and you are looking at a 9,000 possible lumens on this light when plugged into a wall. When you're in the battery mode, you have 6,000 lumens on battery. I was asking the rep, he says it's a little over 20 minutes of full power battery life. So, and I mean full power, like this thing is cranked all the way and you get over 20 minutes. I think he said 24 minutes. Don't quote me on that, but that sounds about what I remember him telling me. Now, the real thing that's kind of crazy about this is that it can strobe. Now, a constant light that can strobe means you're getting a flash out of it for stills. They're saying you get 10 frames per second on the Reflex, and they're saying you're getting 20 frames per second on the Reflex S. So that's the big difference in the 2 models, just so you know. But let's talk about what this strobe is all about, okay? So while you have a constant light that's pretty powerful for video, and you could still shoot it in stills, obviously it's a constant light, just like anything else. There's a constant light, you could shoot stills in this. The flash is a burst, a high output of the LED, overpowered, bang, hitting for a moment. Now the question is, what is that flash duration? Because the whole point of a flash is for it to have a shorter flash duration, or a shorter existence rather, than constant light itself, in order to freeze action to some degree. This flash duration is about 200th of a second. Let's talk about what that really means. So 200th of a second is not the fastest thing in the world, but it does add some flexibility. Let's talk about this. If you want to think about a pretty good speed light at full power, I mean full power, you're getting about 800th of a second flash duration here. That's not sync speed, that's duration. How long that flash exists for in a space while you're shooting a photo. Now, the longer that flash exists, the more it becomes like a constant light, the more it becomes an issue for freezing action. So you always want to have a shorter flash duration. And I think some of the fastest flash duration you're ever going to find are in pack and head kits that are in the thousands of dollars, and they're like, 17,000th of a second as opposed to 200th of a second, right? But you're talking about a constant light that also gives you a flash. So when it comes to flash sync, that's your flash being in sync with the movement of your shutter. So if this is your sensor plane, I'm going to do a really quick breakdown of what flash sync is for those of you who don't know it, and then we're going to go into what this duration means in relation to that. I'm about to get super nerdy. Feel free to skip this if this is boring you. It's going to get a little weird. Okay, so if this is your sensor plane and you open up your shutter, it opens, and then the second shutter comes from behind it to close it. Well, the faster your shutter speed goes, it doesn't just open and close faster. No, what actually happens is your front curtain shutter shows up, and then your rear curtain goes with it. So it's actually just a slit, more and more of a slit going along the sensor plane, as opposed to open, close, open, close. It's really closing behind itself. At some point, your flash will not exist long enough to go along the whole sensor plane. Meaning, if you go to like 1,000th of a second on your shutter, but your flash sync is 2/50th or whatever, it's going to go flash, not exist, and then your shutter's still going, which means, but at some point your shutter is going too fast for your flash to be in sync with this slit going along the center plane. And what you could result in older cameras, newer cameras have like an auto feature that don't let you do it. It actually stops you from doing this. But you were to get half your frame dark, and then you see half your image because your flash was out of sync with the movement of that slit going along the sensor plane. So if this is the way your shutter acts, the way high-speed sync in your strobes acts is by pulsing, right? So it's not so much how fast the shutter opens and closes, it's how fast that little slit of window for the light to actually hit your sensor travels along the sensor plane. And because the flash exists for milliseconds, pop, and it doesn't exist for the rest of this travel, what high-speed sync is doing is pulsating so that it's pop, 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 and staying in sync at a high speed with the shutter moving along the sensor. So it's more about the travel than it is about the actual time. So what is happening here with the StellaPro hybrid light here, right? Well, what's happening is with 200th of a second and it having the ability of being a constant light, it's actually existing for the whole travel time, not really so much the high shutter speed itself. So instead of it going pop, 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 it's pop. So it actually can exist because it does exist for a long period of time. So it's basically like having hypersync, which is where the flash goes for a long period of time. We see this a lot in Broncolor lights where if you put into hypersync, it's not high speed sync where it pops, it's a long duration of pop, just like this. So I guess I could have summed this up by saying it's more a version of hypersync than high speed sync. But here's the difference. With this, if I went from, let's say I'm shooting at 200th of a second and I want to do a faster shutter speed, I go to 400th, I actually do lose one stop of light. You normally don't see that happen with the strobe if you put into high speed sync because it's compensating by pushing through flash, 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 instead of flash the whole time. I feel like this was the worst explanation ever. I apologize. If I confused you, let me know in the comments down below. Hate me. But pretty much, yeah, it's doing kind of a constant light version of hypersync as opposed to high speed sync. Does that help? I hope it helped. I knew this one was going to get messy, but this is kind of what's happening. Technology is getting messy. We're seeing, you know, flashes that are having constant light modeling lights acting like constant lights, right? Like the B10 and the B10 Plus, the B10X, the B10X Plus, they're putting high output modeling lights that they're hoping you can use for constant light setups along with the strobe. This is the strobe giving you a flash setting, hoping that you can use the flash for stills. So it's kind of like they're meeting each other from two sides of the spectrum here. So you kind of got to lean into, do I care more about the stills and the strobe, or do I care more about the constant light and maybe getting a strobe? Think of it that way. But yeah, so this is where things are going. We're actually seeing things getting a little murky when it comes to global shutter as well. The Nikon Z6 has just been introduced. I didn't get a chance to talk about it because I was off for Halloween, which is like the most important holiday ever. But I did get to talk to Nikon themselves right here live on Adorama's Facebook page. We had Rod Marr, who is the Seattle Seahawks official photographer, NFL. You got Chris Odom, who is an internationally acclaimed award-winning wildlife photographer and filmmaker. And you got Mike Corrado, who is like the OG of Nikon of like 30 plus years, an incredible bird photographer and rock photographer, and does some really amazing work with Ronald McDonald House, photographing kids there and helping out that charity as well. So if you had wanted to hear any insights to the Z6 from an actual real world perspective with professionals using it, I know they're from the brand, but they are actually high level pros like Rod Marr working for the NFL, shooting in all sorts of conditions and all sorts of sports, from, you know, tennis to baseball, golf, and football, and everything in between. And Chris Odom, who has it out there in the wildlife, capturing erratic moving animals and subjects on the fly, and also doing video with it. So if you wanted an insight to the Z6, check that out. I'll put the link below. That was a fun conversation, but it's kind of where I'm going to lead the question of the week. Hold tight on that. Before we get to the question of the week, I want to give my shout out of the week to someone I think you guys should all know. She's been doing a lot of stuff for Adorama, producing some amazing events, has been through this industry inside and out, worked a lot with all the trade shows over the years, and now she's kind of freelancing some producing for us. She produced my Halloween event, the fashion photo event with Lindsay Adler, Emily Soto, and all those people. I want to give a shout out to Theresa Rafetto. If you want to stay up on some of the events, there's a clip from Profoto right there, by the way. You can actually get some good BTS. I mean, this was from my special effects workshop. She's showing what was going into some of the makeup. She also got me parking a hearse for the workshop. If you missed out on this, you are sadly out of luck there. But we will be doing more and more events. So stay up on Theresa's Instagram, give her a shout, drop her a comment, let her know she's appreciated. I super appreciate her. These events could not have happened without her. Let's go to question of the week. With all this hybrid technology going on, like I said, the strobes getting into constant, the constant getting into strobes, and now we have stacked sensors giving us such a fast readout. We're actually wondering if we need global shutters. I'm wondering if you guys think we need global shutters. So what is a global shutter? If you don't know, instead of having an electronic shutter that acts like the plane that I was talking about before with the blades, it's a rolling shutter where the pixels activate and deactivate as they go along. What this could do, if it was too slow, it would cause like warping of your images and stuff like that, or you couldn't pan really easily. For video, it's a nightmare, makes everything look like jello. But we're getting better and better, and now we're seeing stacked sensors like the Z6 from Nikon, a flagship camera that has now redefined the flagship tier, if you ask me. Giving you a camera with no mechanical shutter. So now, do we need a global shutter? What does that give us, and what's the trade-off? So in my opinion, global shutter, we want to have a global shutter where it turns on and off globally, as opposed to having a rolling shutter to minimize any sort of distortion. But if we're not seeing any distortion, or distortion that even bothers us in any way, shape, or form, because even a mechanical shutter has distortion if you really want to break it down, I'm not going to. Do we need a global shutter to do that? What are the trade-offs? Well, global shutters need a tremendous amount of processing power. If you want to talk about buffers filling up with images, or just being able to process all that data in one shot and outputting it to a card or a tether or something like that, or even just what heat's generated, or even the price, right? Think about it. All this great technology comes at a cost. Would it be consumer ready? If we're looking at rolling electronic shutters stacked sensors that are able to do 2 milliseconds of readout speeds where it doesn't become a factor anymore, and these are around $5,000 to $6,000, you know, you can even argue the Sony A9, which is in the $4,500 range. Do we need a global shutter which could shoot up the prices to, I don't know, I mean, I don't want to speculate, but $7,000 US area, if you think about it, for that new technology? That'll be a new flagship level, a new way of shooting. What do we actually gain? Well, maybe flash sync, right? Maybe we have zero rolling shutter issues, but do we have them? Do we have these issues? Do we need it? Do we need a global shutter? And what good is this amazing technology if it's so expensive that it just sits on a shelf and only like 0.5% of pros will actually get to use it out there in the wild? Do we gain anything from it? I know there's global shutter cameras out there. None of them are full frame from my knowledge. You know, you're talking about, you know, APS-C or smaller type sensors. I'm talking about full frame, by the way. So before you jump in there, all you hyper nerds that leave a smiley emoji after you're smug to me in the comments, think about it that way. You have to not just put the technology out there, it has to be in the hands of people using it. Otherwise, what's the point of it gathering dust on a shelf? And are we there yet? Do we need it? I don't know. Let me know down below what you think. Do we need a global shutter after seeing a mechanical shutter disappear from the Nikon Z9? I'm curious about that. Let me know if you're interested in any of this stuff. Let me know what you think about those StellaPros. I'm sorry about that explanation. Check out the Halo Compact from Manfrotto. What do you think about OM Systems wiping away the Olympus name and slapping that on the new gear? Are you guys excited about it? Do you think they're going to go in a new direction and do something crazier? And all you drone people, the Mavic 3, you have to be excited about that one. That's a bananas announcement. So let me know what you guys think about all this stuff. You can follow me at LastXWitness. Check out my work on Instagram. Yell at me on Twitter. Check out my own YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit like, share this video around, hit subscribe, plus the bell to get notified when more videos that come out. And I'll see you guys next time. Later.